So I want to start a series of videos that address a major question that has been going around the internet as of late. And this time, no, I do not mean the question of how to get Dylan Mulvaney on Ritalin. What I'm actually talking about now is AI-generated art. This is something that's been of particular interest to me. And I've been playing with Midjourney in the background just as a hobby and learning about it and how to generate interesting images with it. One of the most interesting things that's come out of Midjourney as of late is that somebody used the program to generate a series of photorealistic production stills from a non-existent movie, namely a version of the Disney science fiction virtual reality classic Tron, reimagined as if it were a film by Alejandro Jodorowsky, made in 1976. And what's extraordinary about these images is that they truly look like Tron as if it was done by Jodorowsky. If you don't know who Alejandro Jodorowsky is, he is a legendary avant-garde experimental filmmaker. His movies deal with often questions of spirituality, questions of psychology, sexuality, things like that. Arguably, his most famous film is called Holy Mountain, and it's one that I highly recommend if you haven't seen it. But what's remarkable about the images, like I said, this idea of Jodorowsky's Tron, is it truly does explore the idea of, it really does capture the idea of what would Tron look like if it had been adapted by Alejandro Jodorowsky. And he in particular is of interest in that regard because one of his famously unrealized projects was a multi-part epic adaptation of Frank Herbert's Dune. And it was the subject of a documentary called Jodorowsky's Dune, where they go through the concept art and everything and the plans he had for it, to have H.R. Geiger design the sets and have Pink Floyd do the soundtrack and all that. And it sounds, it looks really cool, but I think, I know a lot of people, this is going to be blasphemy for a lot of people, but I personally really think that would have been a horrible way to adapt it. Especially what he wanted to do with Paul. I'm also of the very controversial opinion that Dune was adapted correctly by Frank Herbert. And, I know when I say that, people are going to say, not Frank Herbert, was adapted correctly by David Lynch. And people are going to hear me say that and say, but Jordan, David Lynch made it rain on Dune, which turned Paul into a literal messiah, showing that David Lynch does not understand Frank Herbert's rich and well-realized source material. To which I say, it was fun to watch. That's all I care about. It was fun. You remember fun? That thing that used to exist before every pop star started trying to sound like Kanye West. Anyway, so the point being, though, there's a lot of very interesting speculation about what Alejandro Jodorowsky's Dune would have been like. And that was on my mind as I was watching the CBS Sunday Morning segment recently on the subject of AI-generated art and the controversy that it's caused. And a big part of that controversy comes from the way that AI art generators create what they do. And the thing is, obviously, these things have no internal intelligence of their own. They're derived from algorithmic reinterpretations of millions and millions and millions of images in their databases to generate a unique image based on the user's specifications. And so the controversy comes from the fact that the data for these things was collected entirely without the permission of the people who did the original works that Midjourney and other artistic art sites like this are using. That was not they did not license the work that they're using or anything like that. And then is something they were talking about in the CBS Sunday Morning Special was that what happens is it's not just the specific works that are logged in the databases and used for the algorithmic reinterpretations that programs like Midjourney generate. It's that all of the artists who did those images had a specific style unique to themselves, and that being the case, they also the users also did not pay any sort of licensing fee to emulate these artists whose works are being clocked in the databases of these programs. And I'll tell you the problem with that. They said in the special that what's happening is, or what they want to have happen, or what they're exploring is licensing packages where, if you want to do something that looks like H.R. Geiger, then you would pay a licensing fee that apparently would go to the H.R. Geiger estate or something, and then it would emulate H.R. Geiger or Norman Rockwell or whoever, even living current artists and everything. And so here's the problem with that. What these programs are doing is literally what your brain is doing. When you come up with something when you imagine a new image that you want to create, that you want to paint, you want to design, your brain is, your subconscious mind, your back brain is building that image out of an amalgamation of all of the perspectives you have ever seen in your life, all of the artworks you've ever seen in your life, every influence you've ever had, every lesson you've ever been taught about how to paint, and the same would be true of music and all of that sort of thing, any other field of endeavor. I'm a professional musician, so that's how it factors for me. And so it becomes a thing of this computer is literally functioning or simulating the functionality of your mind. You have your style, yes, your own individual style, but it is inextricably derived from all of the people that you have studied in the course and studied and learned from in the course of ultimately generating your own unique style. So because it works the same way that your brain is working, it's really, I think, unfair to start saying that you want people to start paying for the right to be influenced by a particular painter, or paying for the right to be influenced by the particular style of a particular painter. That is not how influence works. Furthermore, it's the sort of mandate, if that sort of thing were imposed by government mandate or something like that, or imposed as a business practice, even privately, what that does is that is really going to work against artistic creativity in general. You're going to have the long-term effect of ultimately presuming that this in some way were carried over into how human beings derive influence from one another. You could reasonably find yourself in a position where you're having to pay for every you're having to pay out royalties to every influence you've ever had, to the estate of every influence you've ever had in your given field, for the right to create something that is essentially a wholly original work. And the problem with that is that you have influences. You're going to be influenced by things you're not realizing that you're being influenced by in your creations. So imagine if you're a novelist and you write a book that is, as far as you know, wholly your own creation, and then suddenly you get a letter from Barbara King, to pick a random name, Barbara King Solver's attorney who says, "Oh, the algorithm we have that scans for the influence of Barbara's work found all of these hits on your new book, and you now owe us royalties." This would set a very, very dangerous precedent. And furthermore, it would limit creativity and the potential of and the it would limit creativity and the potential of creativity and the exploration of creativity to only the most wealthy elites who can afford to pay ridiculous royalty fees for having been influenced by other people. Think about it, you can think about it like this to further support my idea that AI art generation works the way your brain works, the same way your brain works. Think about it this way. I am a professional guitarist. Let's say, for example, that I'm in a situation where the band leader says, "Play me a solo that sounds like something Yngwie Malmsteen would do." Well, what I would do is I would say, okay, what are some notable characteristics? And I've studied enough Yngwie solos to be able to work this out pretty quickly. I would say, what are some notable characteristics of an Yngwie Malmsteen solo? Well, he does these three-string triadic sweeping arpeggio runs, usually in 16th note triplets or some subdivision like that. So we would have that, and then he would do a series of descending harmonic minor scale runs, and then he might close it out with a series of ascending diminished arpeggios culminating in a huge vibrato note in the top, somewhere in the top third of the neck. And I could take all of those components, play them out across the chord progression that I was given for the music, and have an Yngwie Malmsteen sounding solo. Now, would it then be appropriate for Yngwie Malmsteen to sue and say, "You owe me royalties for having been influenced by me"? I would argue no, because what happens is at that point, you have to start breaking down on a objective structural level what constitutes being influenced by somebody. And in terms of legal ownership of things, you would be in a position where you would have to, using the music as an example, you would have to establish very brash legal precedents to say, well, Yngwie Malmsteen essentially owns this type of arpeggio sequence on the guitar, or the estate of Paul Desmond is owed a certain amount of money every time someone plays a solo that copies his signature smooth tone and uniquely smooth tone and everything. We would start divvying these things up to a point where it would become economically impossible for people to be creative anymore. And so that's a real concern for me in terms of the creation of new ideas. And so, it might be tempting to say, well, this is only being applied to AI art and only compensating the artists who are being offset by AI art generation and everything. So what I would say about that is that literally the woman that they interviewed in the CBS Sunday Morning special proved my point. Her concern was that she's a concept artist for the Marvel Comics movies. And by the way, with the exception of the two Deadpool movies and Logan, I have not watched any of the Marvel movies. I don't care to see any of the Marvel movies. They do not interest me, so if you're going to write in and say, hey Jordan, what's your opinion of the Avengers prophecy of bleh? I don't care. I literally agree totally with Martin Scorsese that they are like, roller coasters, like theme park rides. They're not like real movies anymore. I'm a DC Comics guy. Anyway, moving on from that. But that's the thing where, we bring it back to the woman with the that works as a concept artist for the Marvel Comics universe, though, for the MCU. Well, she was worried about her job being taken away by AIs, and also saying that the AIs would be taking away as the unique influence, the unique style that she has, that she brings to the table. And to that, I would say that her functioning as a concept artist for the MCU proves the point. I mean, it's entirely hypocritical because you can't say you can't say that she is working that job from a wholly original position. No, they didn't say, here, imagine what Doctor Strange looks like. They said, here's a stat. You know, they gave her, I'm sure, an endless array of Marvel comics just for, you know, and different perspectives and everything on Doctor Strange as a character, the complete history of the character, and said, now bring this into a more photorealistic, cinematic Hollywood type concept that we can take into the film. And so that right there shows her working off of the same parameters, essentially the same essential parameters that an AI art generator software is doing. And so that's one of the big questions that arises that I wanted to talk about, and I'm interested in exploring this topic more because I'm very interested in what's going on. Like, the positives and the negatives do weigh on me. I do have the realistic understanding that there's a big concern here for what will happen with automation and the future of automation and creative people being put out of work. Certainly, that's difficult for me, you know, a concern for me because I'm a professional musician, and I have, in my time, my career as a musician, had to hear things like, we don't book live music on Thursday nights. That's Guitar Hero night. So I get it. I understand the concerns about automation.